Hello everyone, greetings from the 7th of Nero, AJ here, and this was a long time in coming, since the equivalent for War Machine had been started quite a while ago, with no equivalent for Hordes even planned when I first thought about it. It's a difficult one, since beasts are as to Hordes as Jacks are to War Machine, obviously, but a great deal more links Warjacks, and by extension their related constructs, the Laborjack, Steamjack, and Jacks by any other name, than what links the dozens upon dozens of different Warbeasts. Consequently, breaking them down by a theme in world is a bit of a pain without resorting to dividing everything by faction, and even then a fair few of them have a large range of beasts which they utilise. Thus, however nonsensical this approach may be, the course is set in how things have been broken down, and hopefully isn't too confusing. The weapons of war used by those powers who seek to subvert or openly challenge the Iron Kingdoms, depending on one's perspective, are a strange collection of creatures, if creatures is the right word for them. Thus, they who do not use Warjacks have a multitude of means to counter the Cortex-governed machines, and though they may be diverse in form, appearance, and creation, their purpose is ultimately much the same. Replace a 10-ton product of manufacture with a specially evolved or trained beast of similar size and weight, goaded or compelled to terrifying acts of brute violence, and the result may well be the same. But this would require something beyond the means of a warcaster, though few warcasters have attempted to form a similar bond with beasts as with their warjacks. In fairness, they have little reason to do so, and there is nothing to be gained by such explorations into their magic. For the scholar of the arcane, though, it bears wondering as to whether it is possible. Rumours of the old witch of Cador having been witnessed leading the strange nightmares that are Grimkin, alongside confirmed reports of her commandeering Cador and warjacks notwithstanding, I have nothing available to confirm or deny the possibility. Nevertheless, combined with the beast's diversity, the varied ways and methods by which warlocks take control of their beasts, command them in battle, and even attain such beasts as assets in any war effort in the first place, makes the apparent disparity in Warjack design seemingly homogeneous by comparison. Similarly, the bond which exists between Warcaster and Warjack is much the same irrespective of origin, of the Warcaster and manufacture of the origin. The Lich Lords of the Nightmare Empire of Krix notwithstanding, though their innate power may preclude them from being conventional warcasters to begin with. Even so, this aforementioned bond lies in the nature of the construct, which had the same fundamental template in the designs of the Cortex from the years of the rebellion against the Orgoth. While it has undergone some changes under the auspices of arcanists and artificers of different races and factions, the very premise of the device and its fundamental functioning mechanisms do not differ among any random samples. It is true insomuch a warcaster may have difficulty assuming control of certain other warjacks, security measures notwithstanding, but the potential remains for them to do so. Deathjack is perhaps the only true exception to this, being a total aberration, not just an abomination, among warjacks, owing to its autonomy, the source of its power in the skulls of hate and its origins, shrouded in mystery as it is. The Avatar of Menoth may be considered another exception, as it is imbued with power from the prayers of its creators, which afforded it almost complete independence of action from any Menite Warcaster. Despite these exceptions, though, the unifying concept of Warcaster and Warjack certainly has no analogue in Warlocks and their attendant Warbeasts, for whom there appears to be no consistency, and any rule which may be applied would have more exceptions than instances of adhering to said rule. Therefore, as best as I can discern, the gift a warlock manifests may not necessarily be a gift at all in the vein of the warcaster talent. Indeed, where the warcaster talent has such an equivalent in warlocks, it is only for a distinct minority, but curiously may be considered a rule of thumb only among humans, and what domination a warlock brings to their bestiary may be applied to said bestiary alone, and none from elsewhere. Concerning the inconsistency of the source of a warlock's power, were there to be any one unifying concept binding warlocks as a group which share that label, it would, in all likelihood, be the resonance. A warlock's, or a warbeast's, resonance is the capacity one has to form a bond with the other. It is not defined in any quantitative fashion, so even the strongest warlock is incapable of forming a bond with the weakest of warbeasts if they do not share a resonance. The resonance of a warbeast is adopted and developed by warlocks in a studious manner, which would be familiar to those of the Circle Orboros and the Scorn Empire, whose bestiaries are diverse, but also the Blindwater congregation, given the differences, if less pronounced, displayed among their beasts. Concerning resonances as possessed by warlocks of these factions and races, the exemplar is the Scorn Empire. Due to the nature of mortithurgy, it is possible, likely even, that Scorn warlocks are born without any natural resonances at all, A combination of the study of the multilogical arts, experiences of or witnessing its applications to beasts, and exposure to the beasts themselves allows a resonance to develop. As a Scorn warlock gathers expertise in mortithurgy, they may acquire resonances more easily, and those they already possess grow stronger. Slightly differently, human warlocks of the Circle Warbeasts must undergo the mysterious process caused by the wilding to manifest their magical abilities, from which their resonances are awoken. But among the druids who would become warlocks, their strength must be nurtured and developed through training and education. Conversely, while there is an element of adaptation of resonances of warlocks to newly encountered species of beast, at least on an individual level, there is also a strong element of innate ability in establishing a bond with a beast, rendering the resonance as a concept which unites warlocks a little more complicated than it might otherwise be. The Trollkin are the prime example of this, for throughout their history they have proven incapable of developing resonances and thus forming bonds with any beast except those of the Trollblood species. And even then, the differences between the more civilized Trollbloods of the Creels, whether full-blood or dire, and those of the wild, including the elemental trolls, has meant some warlocks, particularly those with a cultural background away from the Creels, acquire a measure of adjustment to be able to quickly bond with other types of Trollblood beasts. But thanks to the bond of blood shared by the Trollblood species, this process is quite trivial compared to the study and guidance for humans and Scorn. Despite this, recent events have caused the Trollkin and their fellow Dhunians, the Farrow, to change how their resonances manifest. The need to ally with each other only a few years ago eventually led to acquiring bonds with beasts of each other's races, which has certain implications to how resonances function in a broader sense, or rather, our understanding of them. And then there are the more unnatural forms of resonance, typified by the servants of Everblight. Thanks to the shards of his Athank and his unparalleled control over the effects of his blight, his dragonspawn and his warlocks break every rule with regard to resonance, despite otherwise adhering to the norms of the bond between warbeast and warlock. However, in this there is a facet of the resonance which is particular to the beast, which may make its concept even more complex. Where warlocks cannot bond with a beast with whom they do not share a resonance, there is cause to suggest that some resonances are inaccessible to some warlocks, at least where living warbeasts are concerned. Historically, the main instance of this has been the Trollblood beasts. Thanks to the quirk of their blood shared by their cousins of the Trollkin, until not long ago, no troll beast of the Creels had been successfully bonded to a warlock who is not of Trollkin blood, and the wild troll beasts were much the same. But the Swamp Troll became an exception when the Croak Warlock, under Chief Maya, proved capable of forming bonds with them. This would suggest the resonance of Trollblood beasts can be acquired by non-Trollkin warlocks. Evidence, or rather the lack thereof, of Scorn attempts to control them indicate incompatibility of resonances. At the very least, it infers Trollblood beasts are unresponsive to mortithurgy. Again, though comparatively recent Farrow bonding with Trollblood beasts, and vice versa, has called this general line of thought into question, making Maya's example far from being the only lasting exception. Perhaps the only limiter which may be considered now is inclination. The presence or absence of a resonance is generally dependent on the species of beast in question. Shared by all beasts of a species or subspecies which possess a resonance is a form of primal magic which it can harness to complement its natural behaviours and habits. And unlike their counterparts, warbeasts are all born with their resonance, specific to their species, making the expression of their magic somewhat predictable. The strength of their resonance merely grows with time as the beast matures, fading away as they weaken with old age. Nominally, when a warbeast or potential warbeast becomes bound to a warlock, the connection allows not only a form of telepathy which transforms the beast into an extension of the warlock's will and a powerful weapon on the battlefield, but also the full utility and expression of the beast's primal magic. It is considered likely that every naturally evolved beast of Imoran, perhaps all of Cain, has a resonance and is restricted only by perceived level and ease of use to a prospective warlock. Creatures such as any form of drake, arachnid, or insectoid, along with many species which inhabit the wilds of the Thornwood, Glimmerwood, and the Bloodstone, are largely unsuited to being warbeasts. However, whether this is because of a lack of innate primal magic is unknown. The reason is generally that they are either too difficult to bring to heel, or lack the necessary intellect or responsiveness to a warlock's will to be effective in battle. Indeed, among every recorded naturally occurring species of living beast which are used by the warlocks of Imoran, with the general exception of those of the Trollbloods, all are either mammalian, avian, or reptilian. Some are humanoid, and even human, or rather, either formally or only partially human. The most insectoid, and an exception which may or may not prove the rule once again, is the Erodices used by the Scorn. From what little I know of them, their anatomy and natural behaviours would make them ill-suited to being warbeasts under any other race. But since they are receptive to morthaurgy and administrations of pain-givers, the Scorn gladly exploit their prowess in combat. Running alongside this concept of living warbeast is that of the non-living warbeast. How natural a non-living warbeast is a matter of perspective, for I am sure the warlocks of the Circle Warbeasts and Everblight's Legion view each other's beasts, and each other no doubt, with no little contempt. Needless to say, like their living equivalents, constructed warbeasts possess a resonance upon creation, or their birth if you will. Most are built from a magical or occult template which dictates the materials of their construction, their appearance, their function, and the manifestation of their primal magic, whatever it might be termed in these artificial warbeasts. Consequently, despite being constructed, or manufactured as it were, they share little, if anything, in common with steamjacks or equivalent machines. Indeed, relative ease of control thanks to being designed and purpose-built, and lack of a natural life cycle may be considered their only fundamental deviations from a living warbeast of popular Imori's imagination. Undoubtedly, the relationship between warlock and warbeast, as a vague analogue, is far older than said relationship of warcaster and warjack. However, it is not as well recorded by chroniclers and historians, and not least because it spans the histories of many more races. Despite this, many reasonable estimations can be made about the various synergistic relationships which exist, irrespective of the means by which they were formed. Though there is no written history of it, it is likely that the warlocks of the Trollblood race have the longest standing such tradition, for they were created much as they are now by Dhunia, however many millennia ago. Their magical gifts have likewise changed only a little, even if they have come and gone from Dhunia's embrace. Once again, on the opposite end of the spectrum are the Blightedness warlocks in service to the Dragon Everblight, who represent perhaps the only cadre of the truly, unnaturally empowered. It would not surprise me if a shard of an Athank was on Lucas de More's mind when he developed his serum to awaken the warcaster talent within himself, if he had any personal or in-depth knowledge of the Blightedness. I digress. Not so ancient as the Trollblood manifestation of the Warbeast Bond are those of the Circle Warbeasts and the Scorn Empire. For the former, little is known about how the black-clad druids came to control the beasts of the peaks and forests, except that they have done so for millennia as well. If what can be surmised about the expansion of their influence from their shrouded origins is anything to go by, they are perhaps the most adaptable and flexible in this regard, something which will require further discussion at a later juncture. Definitively, the Warp Wolf is a strange instance in which a beast is capable of complete and sentient autonomy, especially the purebloods, and the use of these devourer cultists as beasts of war goes back to the days when they submitted themselves before the Blackclads in return for protection and places where they might hunt untroubled. Of a more forceful nature is the latter, the warlocks of the Scorn Empire, though the Eastern people have had warlocks for many generations, long before they became an empire under Vinter Railthorn. The mortaurgical masters brought beasts to heal out of opportunism, much more so than their counterparts of the Circle Warbeasts. And with the Scorn realm's expansion, so too did their bestiary expand, from the ancient days of Cyclopes of the near hinterlands, and then the titans of the southeastern plains, to the various creatures of the eastern bloodstone. More enigmatic, shall we say, is the bond among the Defiers and their nightmares of the Grimkin. For them, however, few have had the dubious fortune of being able to study them. I certainly have not, so I have little but conjecture from the research of others and my own reading on the matter. Even so, it appears as though the nature of the warlock and warbeast for the Grimkin is a great deal more abstract than it might be for the mortals of Imoran. Nightmares are the manifestations of the sins of mankind, if any traits might be assigned to such creatures. As the Defiers themselves appear to gravitate towards some nightmares more than others, it seems more than any other race, they obtain and maintain control of them purely by instinct, if of a semi-divine sort, which is far beyond the means of such living individuals of Cain as you or I. Thus, it is clear the matter of Warbeast and Warlock is a thoroughly complicated concept, and the only thing which connects them all are the labels which Western Imorese look to place upon them, or even what the Warlocks provide themselves.